They didn't clap, and then I heard the word trash. I knew it the second the lights dimmed and no one moved. My daughter, Melanie, had just finished playing the last note of her song at the middle school talent show. She held the final chord like she was holding her breath, hoping, maybe just praying, that someone, anyone, would feel something. But the moment the note faded, nothing. No claps. No cheers. Not even one of those awkward coughs people do to fill the silence. Just a stillness that made my stomach twist. And then I heard it. From somewhere behind me, a voice, not loud but sharp enough to cut clean through the quiet trash. And then, laughter. Short. Mean. A couple kids. A woman. I don't even know. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I sat there frozen, hands gripping my knees like I was holding myself together. Melanie was still up there, standing by the piano, trying so hard not to look crushed. I saw it in her face. The hope draining out of her little by little. She bowed anyway. Like we practiced. Then she turned to leave the stage, and I swear, the only sound that followed her was the creak of the wooden floor beneath her sneakers. Melanie's only 12. She's got this quiet spark that most people miss unless they really look. She's not the glitter and glam type. No big bows or TikTok dances. She's just music. That's her thing. She writes these haunting little piano pieces in her room, humming to herself like she's talking to ghosts no one else can hear. She worked on that song for weeks. Every night after homework, after dinner, after I'd passed out on the couch with my work boots still on, she'd still be there, at the old keyboard we got off Facebook Marketplace, pressing out notes like she was building something sacred. And tonight? She brought it to life. But none of them saw it. Not the parents, not the kids with their iPhones, not the judges in their cheap folding chairs scribbling notes like they were on some talent show jury. Christy Matthews, the PTA queen, was whispering to Marty Roth 2 rows down. They didn't even look up. And when I scanned the crowd and locked eyes with Merle Morris, the vice principal, I saw it in her face. That blank, polite smile people wear when they've already decided your kid doesn't belong. I kept thinking, did they even hear her? Or did they just see a kid in hand-me-down shoes and a thrift store dress? All I could do was sit there, fists clenched in my lap, watching my daughter shrink into herself as she walked off that stage alone. And for a moment, I really believed that would be it. That this night would be the moment she gave up. That the silence would eat her alive. But something was about to happen. And it would change everything. They saw a kid in thrift store shoes. They didn't know what she survived. People love to judge what they don't know. They saw Melanie in that faded blue dress with the stitched-up sleeve and thought they had her figured out. They saw a quiet kid with a second-hand keyboard and figured she didn't belong in their shiny little world of dance recitals and private tutors. But what they didn't see, what they never cared to ask, was where that kid came from. What she carried. And what it took just to show up. I'm James Morrison. I've been a single dad for 8 years now. My wife, Melanie's mom, died when Mel was 4. Car crash. Rainy night. One bad curve, and that was it. She was the glue. The light in our lives. After she was gone, everything fell apart for a while. I lost my job 2 months later. Couldn't focus. Couldn't function. I was waking up with panic attacks, driving to work, and forgetting where I was halfway there. There were nights I'd find Melanie asleep on the couch, still holding a crayon, drawing pictures of her mom with angel wings. That broke me. But it also snapped me back. I knew I had to pull myself together, for her. So I took whatever jobs I could find. Landscaping in the mornings, janitorial work at night. I cleaned floors in the very same school Melanie now goes to. Funny how that works, huh? You mop the hallways, but no one looks you in the eye. You're invisible until they need something. But you know who never treated me like less? Melanie. Even when we were sleeping on air mattresses in a one-bedroom apartment, that girl would run to the door when I got home, throw her arms around my legs, and say, "Dad, I saved you the last Pop-Tart." She's always been that way, quiet, thoughtful, observant. She sees the world in layers. She started playing piano when she was 6. It wasn't even a real piano. Just this busted-up keyboard with one missing key and gum stuck to the side. She found it in a thrift store and begged me for it. $15. I had to skip lunch for 3 days to afford it. But the first time she touched those keys, man, something happened. Her whole face changed. She wasn't just playing. She was telling stories. By the time she was 10, she was writing her own pieces. Nothing flashy. No sheet music. Just emotion. She'd name them things like snow falling upside down or the sound of missing someone. She once told me, "Music is how I keep Mom close." I still can't think about that without choking up. We don't have much. I drive a truck that rattles every time I hit 40. Our apartment leaks when it rains. We shop at the Goodwill across from the Dollar General. But we've got each other. And we've got music. When the school announced the talent show, Melanie didn't even hesitate. "I want to play," she told me. Just like that. No drama. No fear. I asked her what piece she wanted to perform, and she said, "Something new. Something that feels like standing in the rain but not being cold." I didn't even ask what that meant. With her, you just let it happen. She practiced every night. Not to win, just to share. She said she didn't care about trophies. She just wanted people to hear her story. But deep down, I knew she hoped someone would see her. Really see her. Not just as the motherless girl or the poor kid from the edge of town, but as someone who had something worth saying. She picked out her dress the week before. It was the same one she wore to last year's choir concert. The hem was ripped, but I fixed it with some old thread and a steady hand. She brushed her hair with care, asked me to braid one side, like her mom used to do. She looked in the mirror that night and whispered, "I hope they like it." I told her, "Baby, they'll feel it. That's what matters." And the thing is, she did show up. She walked on that stage like her heart was wide open. She shared something real. But instead of clapping, they laughed. Instead of seeing her, they turned away. Instead of honoring what she gave them, they threw silence back in her face. And that's when I realized, this wasn't just about music. This was about how people decide who matters and who doesn't. They didn't hear her because they didn't expect to. To them, she was already background noise before she played the first note. But what they didn't know, what they never expected, was that someone in that room did hear her. And that person? He was about to change the whole damn story. They didn't clap. They never planned to. So there she was, Melanie, walking off that stage like someone had just flipped the lights out inside her. She didn't cry. She didn't run. That's not her style. She just walked, small. Like she was trying to take up less space with every step. And me? I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe right. My chest felt like it had caved in. You ever had that feeling? Like the whole world is watching something break in front of you and nobody even flinches? That's what it was like. Melanie sat down in the corner of the auditorium near the backstage curtain. Alone. Clutching her music folder like a shield. Her back was straight, but her shoulders, they weren't just slouched. They looked folded. Like she was trying to disappear into herself. And I was still in my seat, fists clenched so tight my fingernails left little half-moons in my palms. The judges were already moving on. Marty Roth leaned over to Christy Matthews, muttering something that made her laugh behind her hand. That fake kind of laugh people do when they're proud of being cruel in public. Dave Fowler, the school band teacher who's never taught a day of actual compassion in his life, scribbled something on his clipboard without even glancing up. And then I heard another voice from a row behind me, a soft chuckle followed by a woman saying, "She didn't even dress for the stage." That's what happens when you let just anyone sign up. Trash, someone else echoed. Again. That same word. It hit me harder the second time. Like it was aimed right at her soul. But what really got me was how casual it sounded. Like it wasn't even meant to be hateful. Just normal. Just a fact, like her name or the color of her dress. You can't unhear something like that. My hands shook. Not from anger, at least not just anger. It was something deeper. That helpless, sinking feeling you get when you realize your kid just saw the world for what it really is, and it wasn't kind. Melanie had stepped on that stage to share something beautiful. And the room had decided she didn't deserve to be heard. Not because of her talent. Not because of her effort. But because she wasn't one of their kids. The kids who wore brand new tap shoes and sparkly headbands. The ones who walked around school in matching sibling outfits and had private music lessons with instructors from 2 towns over. Melanie? She had hand-me-down sneakers and an old keyboard with duct tape on the side. And to them, that made her invisible. The next act was already setting up. A group of kids with glittery costumes and fake eyelashes. Their parents were up on their feet filming, cheering, like the last 3 minutes had never even happened. Melanie's performance had already been erased. Like it didn't count. Like she didn't count. And I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up. Not to make a scene. Not to shout. I just needed air. I needed to breathe. I needed to see her, to look her in the eye and remind her she wasn't crazy, that her song was good, that the silence wasn't her fault. But just as I stepped into the aisle, something unexpected happened. A man stood up at the very back of the auditorium. Alone. Quiet. Not filming. Not whispering. Just standing. He was older. Maybe late 60s. Gray suit, clean but simple. A navy blue tie. No expression on his face. His arms folded neatly in front of him, like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. Like he'd felt that silence and decided it was time to interrupt it. And for some reason, as soon as I saw him, I sat right back down. Something about the way he stood. So still, so sure, it made the whole room pause. Even the kids backstage stopped rustling. The air felt heavier. He didn't say a word. He just started walking. Straight down the center aisle. Past row after row of folding chairs and plastic water bottles and whispering mouths. Calm. Steady. Like a stone being dropped in a still lake. I watched as parents turned to each other. The judges looked up, eyebrows raised. Merle Morris squinted like she was trying to place him. Nobody moved to stop him. Even the girl who was supposed to go next froze in place, 1 foot halfway off the side curtain, glitter still falling off her shoulders. This man, who none of us recognized, was cutting through that room like a blade. And every step he took made the silence feel heavier, thicker, like something sacred was about to happen. Melanie noticed him too. I saw her shift in her chair, eyes wide, hands tightening around her music folder. She wasn't scared. Just stunned. Curious. Like she wasn't sure if this was real or a dream she was about to wake up from. And me? I held my breath. Because I didn't know who he was. But something told me, this man didn't come for the glitter or the show. He came for her. The man in the gray suit didn't clap. He stood. The man didn't rush. He didn't look around or smile politely like most people would when they realize they're interrupting something. He just kept walking. Down the center aisle, hands clasped behind his back, head held level, every step like it belonged there. At first, People whispered, "Is he part of the next act? Is that Melanie's grandfather? Should someone stop him?" But nobody did. Not the teachers. Not the judges. Not even Albert Stevenson, the principal, who sat frozen in his front row seat like someone had pressed pause on the whole event. Even Christy Matthews stopped mid-sentence. Her phone, which she'd been using to record her niece's dance routine, lowered just a bit as her eyes followed the man's every move. I looked at Melanie. Her hands were pressed so tightly to her music folder now, her knuckles had turned pale. But she wasn't afraid. I could tell. She was watching him the way a person watches a storm roll in from the distance, stunned, cautious, but almost hopeful. Then he reached the front. And without asking permission, without a single pause or glance at the crowd, he turned and faced the judges. "Excuse me," he said, calm as daylight. "Would it be all right if I borrowed the microphone for a moment?" Heidi Holcomb, the head of the parent volunteer committee, blinked fast like she didn't know whether to say yes or call security. But before she could speak, Philip Faulkner, one of the guest judges from the community theater group, gave a small nod. No one else argued. A student volunteer handed him the mic, almost like she'd been waiting for it to happen. And then he walked, slowly, deliberately, to center stage. The man stood right where Melanie had just played her heart out. Same spotlight. Same silence. But this time, it felt different. He didn't look nervous. He didn't hold the mic like a stranger. He held it like someone used to being heard. "My name," he said, voice strong but low, "is Dr. Josephine Aguirre. I wasn't supposed to be here tonight. I was on a layover, visiting my brother, and his daughter asked me to come watch her perform. But I stayed for the entire show. And I'm very glad I did." You could feel the air shift again. That name, Dr. Josephine Aguirre, rang a bell for some. A few heads turned. I saw Marty Roth nudge Christy and whisper, "Is that who I think it is?" The name wasn't famous to everyone. But it was known by the right people. She was a concert pianist, a composer, a long-retired Juilliard instructor. A legend, if you knew the world of real music. "I've taught piano," she continued, "for over 40 years. I've listened to students audition with near-perfect technique, flawless scales, rehearsed perfection." She paused, eyes sweeping across the judges' table. "But tonight, I heard something different. Something raw. Something honest. I heard a story. One told not with flash, but with feeling. And it came from that little girl over there." She lifted a hand and pointed to Melanie, who immediately flinched, caught like a deer in headlights. The spotlight shifted slightly, catching her in the corner shadows. Her cheeks flushed red, and she half rose from her seat like she was thinking of running. Dr. Aguirre turned back to the mic. "That young lady didn't just play a song. She bared her soul. And you," she paused, letting the silence work like thunder, "you all let the music finish without hearing a single note." I felt it then. The shift. Like the whole room had just realized they'd missed something important. You could see it in their faces, the slow, creeping shame. The coughs. The eyes avoiding each other. Dr. Aguirre wasn't shouting. She didn't need to. Her voice carried the weight of someone who'd spent decades building pianos out of people's pain. "She wrote that piece," she said simply. "And she played it like she's lived every second of it. That, to me, is what art is." She took one step back from the mic. "With your permission, Melanie, would you come back up and play it again? This time, I'd like to accompany you. Just quietly. From the second bench. I promise not to lead. Just to listen." The auditorium fell completely still. Even the glitter-coated kids backstage stopped whispering. Melanie's eyes locked on mine. She didn't say anything, but in that glance, she asked me 1,000 questions. And I gave her the tiniest nod. "Go." So she stood. Carefully. Like she wasn't sure her legs would carry her. Her music folder still clutched in both hands, like it was armor. She walked back toward the stage, her sneakers squeaking a little against the floor. No one clapped yet. Not this time. It wasn't the moment for that. She climbed the steps and met Dr. Aguirre, who simply smiled, stepped aside, and offered the piano bench like it was a throne. Melanie sat down. Laid her hands on the keys. Dr. Aguirre pulled a second bench beside her, not to play over her, but just to be there. To echo her. That was the feeling I got. Like she wasn't trying to take over, just make sure Melanie's voice was loud enough to be heard this time. And then, she began to play. This time, they listened. Melanie sat at the piano, breathing steady. I could see the rise and fall of her shoulders, measured, controlled. But I knew her well enough to spot the storm beneath it. She didn't look at the crowd. She didn't even glance at Dr. Aguirre. She just stared at the keys, like they were the only things in the world that still made sense. Then, her fingers moved. The first note came out soft. Barely louder than a whisper. Like she was testing the waters again, unsure if the ocean would swallow her whole. But it didn't. Dr. Aguirre waited exactly 2 measures, then joined in, gently. No spotlight stealing. No grand flourishes. Just subtle chords in the background, like hands catching a child who was about to fall. And suddenly, it was like watching something be reborn. The same song. The same melody. But different. Fuller. Richer. Not louder, braver. Like Melanie had remembered she didn't need permission to take up space. The audience? Silent. But not like before. This time, they weren't ignoring her. They were holding their breath. Even the judges had stopped writing. Philip Faulkner leaned forward, elbows on knees, eyes wide like he was seeing color for the first time. Christy Matthews had put her phone down, completely. Her hands were folded over her lap, knuckles pale, like she couldn't decide if she was about to clap or cry. And me? I couldn't blink. Because the girl sitting on that bench wasn't just my daughter anymore. She was a force. A voice. The kind that people try to ignore when it doesn't fit into their polished little boxes, but can't once it starts speaking in truth. She played like her heart was a story that had finally found the right words. And with Dr. Aguirre beside her, matching her rhythm note for note, it felt like something sacred was unfolding right there in that gym-turned auditorium. When they reached the part she'd always struggled with, the transition from minor to major, the emotional pivot, Dr. Aguirre layered a low, delicate harmony beneath it. It wasn't flashy. Just anchoring. Like a quiet reassurance whispered between verses, I've got you. Keep going. And Melanie did. She leaned into the keys, closing her eyes. Her head tilted slightly to the left, the way it always did when she got lost in the music. And that's when I saw it, the change. She wasn't performing anymore. She wasn't hoping for claps. She wasn't bracing for judgment. She was telling the truth. Her truth. And she wasn't asking permission this time. The final note hung in the air like a feather refusing to fall. Then, silence. A beat. 2. And then, it hit. Applause. Not polite. Not slow. Explosive. The room erupted like someone had struck a match. The entire crowd stood up, rows and rows of people who had said nothing minutes ago, now clapping, whistling, shouting her name. Melanie. She wrote that? She's amazing. Phones were up. Faces were shining. Some parents had tears in their eyes. And the same woman who had called her trash earlier? She clapped harder than anyone, like no one would remember what she'd said. But I remembered. And Melanie? She didn't even flinch. She just turned slowly toward Dr. Aguirre and gave her a look I'll never forget. A mix of gratitude and awe. Then she looked out at the crowd, head high, shoulders back. And she smiled. Not a shy smile. Not one of those "thank you for tolerating me" smiles. This one was different. It was earned. She stood. Took a full bow. And the room lost it all over again. Cheers shook the rafters. A few of the judges actually stood on their chairs to see her better. Philip Faulkner clapped with both hands over his head. Heidi Holcomb turned to Albert Stevenson and whispered something with urgency. "And me?" I cried. Not loud. Not messy. Just tears running down my face, dripping onto my jacket, and I didn't care. I didn't wipe them away. Because in that moment, for the first time in a long time, I wasn't holding anything in. She walked off the stage slow and steady, like she'd always belonged there. And the moment her feet hit the floor, the crowd parted like a tide. Dr. Aguirre stayed back, hands folded, watching with the smallest nod of pride. Melanie walked straight toward me. Still holding her music folder. Still wearing that blue thrift store dress. And as she reached me, I opened my arms and she didn't hesitate, just folded into me like she was finally safe again. "You did it," I whispered. She didn't say anything right away. Then she leaned back, looked up at me, and said quietly, "Dad, they heard me." And all I could do was nod. Because yeah, they did. But only because she refused to disappear. Only because someone decided to listen. They called her trash. Now they couldn't look away. The clapping didn't stop right away. It kept coming in waves, like the crowd was trying to make up for what they hadn't done the first time. Every time it started to die down, someone else would stand up, shout her name, or clap harder. Like the entire room was waking up from a long sleep they didn't know they were in. And standing right in the middle of all of it, was Melanie. She didn't shrink. She didn't hide. She stood next to Dr. Aguirre with both hands still on her music folder like it was a medal she'd earned. The judges were talking now, openly. Leaning across the table, waving people over. You could see it in their faces, regret, awe, maybe even shame. Then Philip Faulkner stood. He motioned for the microphone. Dr. Aguirre handed it to him without a word. He cleared his throat. "I think I speak for the entire panel when I say, we got it wrong." Dead silence followed. Even the kids backstage froze. Philip looked out at the audience, then down at Melanie. "I've been judging talent shows for 15 years. I've seen kids spin, tumble, sing pop songs off YouTube karaoke tracks, and yeah, they're talented. But tonight, I saw something different. Something real." He turned back to the table. "Her name needs to be on the finalist list. I don't care if it breaks the schedule or ruffles feathers. We can either reward the loudest acts, or we can reward truth. I vote truth." 2 judges nodded immediately. One clapped once and whispered, "Finally." Even Marty Roth looked like he'd been hit with a realization he couldn't argue with. Then I saw Heidi Holcomb whispering frantically to Albert Stevenson, the principal. She pointed toward Melanie, then toward Dr. Aguirre, then toward her phone. Albert just nodded. You could practically see him rewriting his school newsletter in real time. That's when Christy Matthews, the same woman who'd smirked earlier when someone called my daughter trash, got up and made her way through the crowd. I felt my jaw tighten. I didn't know what she was about to say, but I was ready for anything. She stopped in front of Melanie, crouched slightly, and said, "Sweetheart, I think I owe you an apology. You made us all look at ourselves a little different tonight." That was brave. Melanie didn't answer right away. She just blinked at her. Then she said, soft but clear, "It wasn't brave. It was the only way I know how to speak." That shut Christy right up. Dr. Aguirre smiled beside her, nodding like she'd just watched someone graduate from something much bigger than middle school. Then, she turned to Melanie. Would you like to play that piece again, for someone else? Someone I'd like to introduce you to? Melanie tilted her head. Who? I have a friend, Dr. Aguirre said, who runs a mentorship program. It's for young composers. It's in Chicago. Weekend intensives. Real training. And scholarships, full ones. I couldn't even swallow. Dr. Aguirre continued, you won't need to audition. You already did. Melanie looked at me. Her eyes wide but hopeful. That quiet flicker again. The one that said, can I dream a little bigger, Dad? Just this once? And I gave her the smallest nod. The kind only she and I would understand. Then Dr. Aguirre reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a cream-colored card. Just like that. No big gesture. No speech. Just an invitation with weight. She handed it to Melanie, who held it like it might disappear if she blinked. You're not just talented, Dr. Aguirre said. You're necessary. And the world needs more truth like yours. Albert Stevenson stepped forward then, face red, tugging at his tie. We'd like to extend an invitation to Melanie to represent our school at the regional showcase in 2 months, he said. It's, an honor. And long overdue. Long overdue. That's what stuck with me. Because none of this was about Melanie suddenly becoming good. She'd always been good. They just hadn't looked. The same people who couldn't be bothered to clap the first time were now standing in line to shake her hand, to take selfies, to whisper things like I knew she had something and that girl's going places. But I didn't care about any of that. I was watching her. And Melanie? She didn't bask in it. She didn't soak it up like some kid finally getting their moment of fame. She just stood there. Quiet. Still. And when someone asked her, how does it feel, she looked them in the eye and said, like I was always here. You just couldn't hear me. Absolutely, let's bring this home. She didn't just win. She rewrote the whole stage. Later that night, after the crowd cleared out and the folding chairs were half stacked in the corner, I sat in my truck outside the school with the windows down. The air was still warm, but the breeze had a different kind of bite to it now. The kind that comes after a storm's passed. Melanie sat beside me, her dress bunched up around her knees, still clutching that little cream-colored card like it was a golden ticket. She hadn't said much since we left. And honestly, I didn't either. We didn't need to. Sometimes the loudest victories don't come with cheering. They come in the quiet. When the truth has been spoken, and you don't need to explain it anymore. She turned to me finally and said, do you think they'll remember me, Dad? And I looked at her, my daughter, my miracle, my little girl who had just stood taller than a room full of people who once looked past her, and I said, no. I don't think they'll ever forget you. She smiled, turned back to the window, and started humming something new. A melody I didn't recognize. It wasn't the one she played on stage. It was something else. Lighter. Brighter. Like freedom had a sound, and she was trying to name it. That's when it hit me. This story? It was never really about winning. Or clapping. Or titles. It was about being heard. And once you're heard, truly heard, you don't go back to being silent. Melanie didn't change that room because she shouted louder than anyone else. She changed it by refusing to shrink. By choosing to show up with her whole heart, even when it felt like no one would catch it. She played her truth. And someone finally listened. You know what else I've realized? All it took was one person, one, to see her clearly. Not save her. Not rescue her. Just recognize her. And that was enough to tilt the whole room on its axis. Not with applause. But with respect. You ever notice how people will ignore you until someone else points out you matter? Then suddenly, everyone wants to claim they always believed in you? Let them. Let them rewrite their memory if it makes them sleep better. Because the truth? The truth already happened. And we carry it with us. Every note. Every stare. Every whisper of trash that got turned into thunder. That night didn't just change Melanie. It changed me. For years, I thought the best I could do was protect her, keep her head down, work hard, stay quiet, and maybe the world would be kind. But that's not enough. What she needed wasn't protection. It was permission. To take up space. To speak. To play her truth like it deserved to be heard. So if you're watching this, and you've ever been that kid, ignored, dismissed, whispered about in a room that never really saw you, I see you. And if you're still holding back because no one clapped the first time you tried, play again. Louder, if you have to. Softer, if that's more your style. But don't stop. Because one day, someone will hear it. And when they do, you won't have to explain yourself. The room will shift. They'll lean in. They'll wonder how they ever missed it. And you'll smile, not to gloat, not to prove them wrong, but because you knew. You always knew. So if this story hit home, if you've ever felt invisible, unheard, underestimated, drop a comment below and tell me, when was the moment you realized your voice mattered? Let's build a space where silence gets broken, and truth doesn't need permission. Musical keyboard like this video. Bell subscribe for more stories that remind you you're not alone. Megaphone share it with someone who needs to hear, you are not invisible. Thanks for watching. Thanks for caring. And most of all, thanks for listening.